Hello, everyone, and welcome to Quadcast, the podcast where we break down political boundaries one cast at a time. This is episode 6, and I'm your host, Cavolo, representing the auth-left.
Right, my name's Tim. I'm representing the libertarian right.
My name's Lina, and I'm representing the libertarian left.
And today we have a special guest with us.
And I am Chelo, the requisite centrist on today's episode, and I like to support the current status quo of the world, which is, I guess the closest way would be liberal democracy of describing it. As a law student, those are my values that I support.
That's nice. Okay, so in this episode we will do something a little bit different. Chado will give us a proper introduction because, there are many kinds of centrism and he is the status quo centrist. So he supports, as he just said, the status quo of his country. But we don't know what's the status quo in his country. He's from Serbia, by the way. So since the status quo changes over time and depends on where you live, like he'll have to introduce himself and his background and all his political takes. And with that, I'll just give you the spotlight.
Thank you, Carol. As for the status quo in Serbia, it has changed over the last half a century. Even we went from having the status quo be socialism in the way of Titoism and so on, where during the 90s it turned into this, as one person described it, synthesis of nationalism and socialism, sort of like some concoction of National Bolshevism to an extent, but that fell after 5th of October 2000, when the last dictator was toppled and in came in liberal democracy, such as in most of the Western countries. And with that came some changes. And with time, the liberal democracy has solidified itself in the country, and we have shown that we are liberal in a sense, with having one of the first lesbian prime ministers in the region, and I think in general. And the country overall has been making some strides in doing justice to all the previous issues that were neglected during the previous regimes. As for my political stance, I usually would support the liberal democracy. As a law student, I am taught that how to interpret the law, and we are supposed to stick to that law because it's a common ground that all political parties that are in the state representative in the parliament have agreed upon. And following those laws, we can go to a common goal, which is prosperity of our country. Now that's the goal on paper, but real life can have some deviances from it. Also, I really like barbecues. If anybody is making one, please invite me.
Of course.
So, should I introduce today's news or?
I was actually expecting a longer introduction, but I guess, there's not much to say when you're a centrist.
Okay.
Evil.
Okay, you caught me unprepared.
Well, should we start with the largest piece of news?
What?
Who's got the largest piece of news today?
I mean, the largest piece of news would be the UK riots, which we'll get into. But I actually wanted to start the debate that we were talking about last episode first, about the EU.
Yeah.
and then we can just get into the news. So, Cedo, you're welcome to participate in the debate from your centrist position. So, for everyone who wasn't present in the last episode or didn't watch the last episode, the VOD is up, so you can just watch the VOD. And we were talking about the EU, the new AI thingy that popped up. And we left off the episode with the question, is it good or bad that the EU regulates, companies and businesses and stuff like that? To which I think it is a good thing. But, of course, Tim disagrees. And I'm not sure on Lina's stance.
We'll see.
We'll see. Okay.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm glad you're at least towing the left authoritarian line at this point, because sometimes I am surprised by your takes because they are a lot more liberal than I'd expect. But
yeah, I do have a few liberal takes like surveillance. I don't like surveillance, but other than that, I'm pretty authoritarian. I don't like people just doing whatever they want.
Right, yeah, and that's why you like the EU. It makes perfect sense. I'm not surprised at all. But I mean, I think having a centrist here for this discussion is pretty good, because the thing that most people believe is that the EU, well, there's the sentence, right? It would only harm us, would only do us harm if we left the EU. I think that's what a lot of people believe.
I do believe that too.
It seems to me to be the centrist position, and I wonder if we can maybe break that up a bit, because, well, I mean,
okay, so
why don't you go ahead? I mean,
okay,
we haven't heard your take yet.
Who goes first in explaining why we disagree? Like,
I mean, why don't you go ahead, Cheeto? Because then we can start to the discussion and we know where you stand.
Yeah.
So, on the issue of regulation of AI, I myself take the centrist position, as in, well, we have to look at it on both positives and negatives. With regulation of AI can be a tool that would help smaller companies make websites and whatnot, and would help both small and large users in some needs that would otherwise cost a very large amount of money. But on the same reasons why AI would be helpful is also the same reason why it would be detrimental, where it would take a whole industry out of a job. Although things of this nature have been going around since ancient times. For example, the automobile killed the entire forest industry that was around the time, made many blacksmiths that go out of business and whatnot. So AI could be just one of those new developments of our modern life that we have a problem today, but in the future it would probably become standardized. So I just like cars today, where we don't really think too much about them politically. I mean, I believe some people would probably think about politically, but they're just a mainstay of life. So I think AI could probably just become another mainstay of life if regulated very well. But it is not up to me to make decisions, so I'm just following whatever the EU Parliament does.
Okay, but
okay, well, that is pretty centrist.
That's very centrist. But the thing is, we were talking. Okay, last episode we were talking about the regulation on AI, but today's debate was gonna head more into regulation in general. Like, is regulation good in general? You know, from an authoritarian thing like the EU. So,
I mean, I was interested in that take just now, because even centrists should understand that banning AI would just move this emerging market for AI tools and resources and stuff into other countries, where they would still produce these and I guess sell them over the internet because it's software. So really, all we're doing is depriving Europe
I
from
would
its
also say, add that if a big open market like EU, if they would ban it, that would just open up its use to people who don't like EU, for example, the Russian Federation and the PRC.
An excuse? I'm sorry.
If they could use it against EU.
You mean as a political tool or
both as a
the actual
political
AI, like AI killer robots with like Z's on them?
Well, they could use it, like, for example, from anything as benign as Twitter bots to make human-like opinion.
Yeah, they're pretty good at those. I
To
mean,
development on, you can just, if AI will progress in the future while the EU is lagging behind, the AI will continue progressing, and a country like Russia could be completely like software independent of most Western software.
huh. That would be crazy, yeah. Imagine if you could get an AI to like tell you how to construct a microchip, and so China and Russia start making their own microchips. That would be crazy.
Exactly.
Yeah. Huh. I never thought about this kind of stuff, but I guess if we regulate it in the EU, then there will be problems with other countries using AI for like defense capabilities or just facial recognition. That's one of the things that were banned under the AI Act, and so I think that there are huge military and defense applications in there just for things like I heard. Have you watched this? There was this movie in 2017 produced by some college in the US where they sort of this concept called, I think they called it murder bots or slaughter bots. That was the movie. Have you heard of slaughter bots?
No, I haven't.
Yeah, they presented this idea where in the future, and I'm pretty sure that major militaries around the world are experimenting with this, and they have this already. But you get like drones and lots of them, and you build like little AI computers in them with facial recognition and a small amount of explosive, and you set them free from an airplane. And yeah, they can strike a target anywhere. They can go through air shafts. They can go through windows. It's crazy. They can blow up walls and let other drones in. Yeah, and it got me really scared. But other countries are doing this. I bet Russia is working on this. And imagine if we don't because of regulation. Yeah, that's one of the dangers.
I do have a counter argument about that because I don't think the regulation that the EU has put on really hinders progress of AI technology. I mean, it hinders the misuse of AI technology because we shouldn't be using AI for, what Russia would use it for, all the things you've said, like creating robots that use facial recognition technology to kill other humans.
Yeah, but look. I mean,
we could defend ourselves against that with AI. I don't think the regulation prevents that from happening. But
no. The militaries will still research, no matter what regulation you pass. Sure, but don't you see how most of the military tech that's being used right now is produced by private companies like Boeing and stuff? They produce our aircrafts, and I'm not sure who produces the Eurofighter. The tanks are produced by private companies. They're all private, and if you have passed these regulations, I'm sure they shouldn't be allowed to operate on the regulations in the AI Act now.
If possible, I would like to add that Russia already implemented AI facial recognition in the city of Moscow, to the point where if you're on a protest, you will be identified no matter what.
That's in Moscow right now.
Yeah.
Wow. Huh.
But actually, last year too. My previous girlfriend was on such a protest. She was immediately identified by AI on the camera and immediately fined for it.
That's crazy.
I mean, that goes...
This happened in China.
Oh, in China especially.
Yeah.
That goes, like, my argument is, this is what happens when you're not in the EU. You use the AI for facial technology stuff, and this is what happens. You go protest and you get arrested because the AI recognizes your face.
Cavolo.
That's still going to happen.
The fact that the EU AI Act literally has like an exception for serious cases of law enforcement.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's an exception. It's not the rule.
Thing is, the people who will do the identifying are probably going to be the Secret Service, and the Secret Service already works outside the law.
Yeah. We have a couple of Secret Service organizations.
I mean, okay, I'm not delusional. I know there are secret services that work outside the law, and I know there's a whole world that works outside the law. But it's not any better than having, like, everyone work outside the law. Like, the law in place limits the misuse of AI.
Limits it for independent operators, but completely allows it for state operators, which have the monopoly on violence already.
Well, not completely.
Thanks for putting into words what I didn't get to describe in like.
It is limited for governments as well. It's just the secret services work outside the law anyway.
It's only limited on the surface, and the government is more than what's happening on the surface.
I would like to add that the definition of a serious threat of law enforcement to help law enforcement, I have a feeling that it would probably be defined more, because if it is just a serious threat, that can be a very broad term as to what is a serious threat.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's lots of laws like this. They usually some kind of loophole for the state to still operate fine. And then there's also parts of the state that don't pay attention to the law, but that's not material to the discussion on why regulation is bad for, well, everybody. I'd make the case, and this is the real libertarian stuff, before I just wanted to talk about murder robots, but seriously, regulation is terrible. And when you do it on a supranational scale, so you don't even have your national government, you have a government for your government, it's at its worst. And I think the EU shows this. I mean, you can see it everywhere. I don't think EU citizens, there's been a time I'm sure when the EU started up when you could say, oh, it doesn't harm me, does it? I mean, where am I being manipulated in my life? And you'd go, well, I'm sorry, I could point it up. If someone asks me this question, well, what does the EU do to me? I ask them, have you drank from a plastic bottle of water in the past half year? Have you? You guys are in the EU, don't you? I mean, you've drank...
I would like to add, I'm not in the EU, and I still have that cap on the plastic bottle.
No way.
Oh. Hold on.
No, that's because...
Look what the EU is doing to our Serbian brothers.
That's because there's two ways to deal with laws that are brought on such a scale. It's either you work differently within the area and outside the area, or you comply to the strictest standards. And some companies just choose to comply to the strictest standards.
This is so... I'm so sorry, Serbia.
Yeah, I'm a bit late, but I don't think I understood the question very well.
The question?
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
You were asking about the plastic bottle. I didn't understand that.
Yeah, have you drank from a plastic bottle?
Have I what?
Cavolo? Have you drank from a plastic bottle of water?
Yeah, every day I drink from my bottle of water.
Yeah, have you tried opening it up like used to all your life?
Okay, but how does that affect me? Like, I prefer it like that, so the cap doesn't... Yeah, I generally prefer it like that.
Really?
Yeah, the cap doesn't fall off, it stays on the bottle, and I can just throw the whole bottle with the cap in the plastic bin.
This is peak.
Would you like an additional purchase of an eye patch?
Yeah, right. An iPad.
I don't get the joke.
Sorry.
I have no problems with the cap being attached to the bottle. I don't get the joke. What's wrong with it?
Yeah, no, it's objectively bad. That's what I'd say.
It's not.
The point isn't even that the plastic cap is bad or that the plastic cap is good. It's the point. The point is that we didn't get to decide. Not even the Serbians did.
I mean,
and that's the problem
you can just take off the cap if you're strong enough.
Yeah, you can rip it off.
Yeah.
Like a real anarchist.
How is that not a decision?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'd just like to buy the old bottles, but I can't now because people in Brussels, million kilometers away from where I live, decided that this should be this way. And I don't even care if there's democratic legitimation of democratic decisions because the majority doesn't decide about my rights. And the point it's not even as much about rights as it is about the efficiency of markets. And my case would have to stand on this ground that when consumers, the people actually paying the money, make the decisions, the market gets more efficient and provides better solutions to our problems. And I just think that I see it all around me, that regulation is doing the exact opposite. And at most, when they're not corrupt, when they're not doing bullshit as they are usually doing, these politicians in Brussels, when they're actually following the democratic vote, they're still doing what the majority wants and not what the customer wants. And that's why regulation is bad.
If I would like...
Oh, sorry, Cedo, go on.
Well, I do understand that it would be a good thing to have personal choice, and there is, of course, a level of personal choice that should be left to the individual. Without some regulation, for example, I personally say that these bottles are annoying, but I can see what the goal is, and the goal is to reduce the number of plastic in the environment. And what I would like to ask is on if the market would always go for the best thing that's for consumer in the short term, sometimes companies would like to offer that short-term benefit on the long-term cost of the consumer.
So you're talking about like there's always decisions where you weigh long-term costs against short-term costs and benefits.
Exactly.
Right?
For example, car companies have, of course, pushing for more and more sales that you do. But even from the 70s, companies like Exxon, which is like one of the largest producers of petrol and oil,
right? Yeah.
Knew about the effects of their products on the environment and...
You're talking about climate change.
Exactly.
Right, yeah. Mm-hmm. I'm aware. The oil companies have known for decades before it became common consensus. But I'm not sure if that's even something you could count as like it's more of an externality. I mean, it's not really of consequence to your company when there's this problem which all countries on Earth, every human breathing out carbon dioxide.
Way of viewing the whole ecosystem, to just call whatever problem that affects others an externality and not mind it at all.
Well, it's obvious to me that not one single oil company can be at fault for the climate change crisis.
Of course not, but as an industry, they should, because you can weigh it as an externality, but in turn, a worsening of the environment would just lead to people and just, living shorter lives, the climate just being in a worse state. And at some point, it would also result in a failure of sales for the company because just people are no longer living in certain places and just, the broader effects of climate change. Now, these are in a very long term effects that we have to look at, but we also have to think of them as the possible future events.
Yeah, hey, fair enough. I'm gonna try to give a quick answer to this, and then I'm gonna open this up because I'm sure we'll have a good discussion. But my position is there's some like costs and benefits to a company that can be weighed, and some that I think Elon Musk has actually given the definitive take on this when he did his first show on Rogan. And that was pretty popular, and that's why it entered like the public discourse at that point. And I hear this argument very often. It makes sense. You could go like this, well, externalities, they need to have prices on them, right? Because there's some externalities where there are prices, right? You pollute the groundwater and your local government comes and says, here, you need to pay a fine, right? That's a price externality. But some externalities aren't priced, like I don't know, using up air. I guess that wouldn't even entail any, like, because there's no shortage of air, but I guess you're polluting the air by leading poisonous gas into the atmosphere in some part of the country. And I guess if it's going to hurt nobody directly, but it's still going to pollute, increase pollution in that area, then you'd be contributing to an environmental problem, but not actually paying any costs for this. There aren't any prices attached to this. And that is a legitimate problem that economists have studied for decades, and there's solutions on, like the carbon tax, for example. I'm against taxes, so I'm against the carbon tax, but a carbon tax, it makes a lot more sense than most taxes because all you're doing is actually pricing this externality. So this is an actual solution. But there's a reason to believe that companies would self-regulate when it comes to environmental damage. For example, you need to consider that with less state regulation and less of a state in general, a lot more land which would be privately owned rather than by the state who doesn't care about pollution. And so it would be owned by private property owners, and they would care about pollution, and they would ask you to pay them
I don't think they would care about pollution. I mean, if the state...
Well, of course, you care about your own land, don't you?
I mean...
If you own a forest and somebody puts, like, garbage on your forest, you're going to hold them accountable.
Okay, let me rephrase that. They would care about pollution, but they wouldn't care about more general problems like climate change or CO2 emissions, stuff like that.
CO2 is the ultimate unpriced externality. That's what I was leading up to. I think most environmental problems can be fixed without regulation, just because it privatizes everything. Everybody cares about their land, their property. They don't want it damaged and polluted. And so everybody will care about this and make people care about the environment, because when the environment's private, people actually care about this land. It's not like government owned and like used by everybody and owned by nobody.
By your logic, what makes the government different? Like, why do you say that the government doesn't care but the private people would care? Like,
it's obvious, isn't it? I mean, government owns a part of the country. It's usually, I mean, look, I mean, there are governments in the Western world which keep like nice forests. They keep them clean and stuff. But there's always these few spots. I'm not sure if you have this in your cities, but in my cities, there's usually a couple of spots where nothing's built, and it's because it's government land. Some government office and so holds this, and there's nothing being built there, and people are dumping garbage in. Nobody cares because nobody owns it. And I mean, that's the tragedy of the commons, basically. If nobody owns something, nobody is going to take care of it.
But the government owns it. Like,
it's
as if, okay, replace the government with a lazy person that owns something but doesn't want to take care of it. What's the difference?
The lazy
like to say...
sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry.
Okay.
There's actually a reason. Oh, this is terrible.
We are terrible.
I'm sorry.
I would like to add that in the Balkans especially, a lot of the abandoned buildings here are actually privately owned, but by investors who just ran out of money.
Oh, okay.
I mean,
so what's the land doing? Just sitting around while they're going through bankruptcy proceedings, or?
I don't know.
Because here's the thing: if you own property and you're not doing anything with it, and you don't want to do anything with it, like in your example, Cav, then you sell it. You have a reason to sell it. Right? It's all about.
I understand that, but for some reason, people.
Then
I think it's
the
more
government would have a reason to sell it as well.
No, the government doesn't have a reason to sell it. The government takes people's money for a living. They don't have a reason to generate an income because it doesn't benefit any single person.
So you say the government takes money. So the government has property. It's not doing anything with it. Why not sell it to get money?
Yeah, well, I mean, taxes are different from generating money by actually providing goods and services. One, something governments are very good at. Another, something governments are pretty terrible at. And there's good reasons for it because they have no reason to actually provide goods and services. That's why governments aren't, investment, I should say, like, they're not property managers. I mean, most governments, when they do, are pretty bad and they sell their land at way too low prices. Just like what we talked about. Didn't we talk about privatizing Eastern Germany and Russia after the fall of the Soviet Union? They sold all of that crap off for like dumping prices because government doesn't care about profit. That's where the problem lies. When you try to sell something at a profit, you're going to provide goods and services and compete in the market, and government doesn't have to.
I don't think that. Oh, sorry. Go on, Cedo.
As someone who is from the former Eastern Bloc, from what I know is that both in Russia and ex-Yugoslavia, Serbia, for example, there has been a very much destruction of rule of law. So crooked people can get in power, and crooked people would sell to their friends at a very reasonable price. Sometimes it might not be their friends. Sometimes it might be a foreign government. For example, a lot of Serbian or what used to be government-owned firms were sold to Chinese companies, and now they're the most profitable companies in Serbia.
Oh, yeah. Well, sorry, is that something I missed just there?
I think just stuff that I would like to add.
All right.
Yeah, someone else go on. I was distracted just there. Sorry.
Well,
all right.
I
want to add on stuff. Sorry. I've been a bit quiet just to see, let everyone's take seep in, and basically, I mostly agree with him on this, except I think that the only way to actually make sure that the people care for the property and for the environment at large is for the ones who make the decisions to be the workers.
Okay.
Because the regular worker is going to be way more affected by climate change than the wealthy capitalist.
Now you're talking my language.
Oh God!
I don't think government is like with government you usually weigh in a consequentialist manner whether a regulation is good or bad. And I think government through a consequentialist manner you can argue that a government can make good regulation, like regulating the oil industry so that we don't use so much oil and shift to other ways of production of energy. However, government doing that is not always going to lead to good regulation. Good regulation is self-regulation on the basis of decision that is made by the people who actually are affected by it directly, who know how they are affected by it, and who know the causes.
Well, but don't we agree on the position that regulation shouldn't be something that's handed down from the state onto other people by a majority vote or some other way of legitimizing, like pressing your opinions onto other people, because that's what regulation does. When you have self-regulation or a self-regulating economy or free market, there are such things as standards in a single company, because it's profitable to have standards like Purdue safety standards in a factory, because it's not profitable to have your workers fall into the iron cauldrons every day. Doesn't make, I mean, I could go on, but you'd still have standards. It's just that each company, each man sets their own boundaries and regulations and so on, and they compete for which is the best. I think this system should be our blueprint for, I mean, a better society. And what we're heading towards is more and more centralization, more and more the exact opposite of what I was just talking about, less decentralized decision making and finding out the best way, and more centralized coordination of these regulations. I mean, don't you agree that we should strive towards decentralization?
Yeah, and decentralization cannot happen if you have a centralized command structure of a company.
I almost thought you were gonna say the C word there, but yeah, the other C word, company is fine. Now, companies, wouldn't workers have companies too? I mean, the co-ops, that's the third C word now. I was thinking you were gonna say capital, and now that's something I have a problem with, but I mean, yeah. The companies are, at least they're competing in a market, right?
Thing is, what is profitable is not always the best solution.
Okay, well, that's something we disagree with. I think
because
if you have a system in which everything is priced, you can very well have, I mean, profit as a means of determining the efficiency of your operation, and if it's working at the most efficient and it's going to provide the best service for the least amount of money, and it's going to benefit
disagree
everybody.
with that completely.
To reiterate a point that has already been made, immediate profit is not the best way to determine it, because you're talking about the profit on the spot. The thing is, you have a lot of other factors in the future that you have to consider as well, which I think only a person who is also involved in the profit, so they can make a good decision based on efficiency, but is also going to be heavily affected by the future, will actually get to.
Yeah, sure. And that's why you need speculation. That's why you need people you need free enterprise, basically, because people, entrepreneurs will make speculations about the future. They will make they have these ideas about the future. They will invest, they will put their money where their mouth is, right? Invest their own money into their vision of the future, which they think is going to become true, and then make them rich. And then you see who's right and who's wrong, and people who are right get rewarded, and people who are wrong get punished. Again, it's profit that shows you where the most efficient point of production is, and those people, I mean, they make the profit, they win in this kind of system. I think these kind of systems promote a better, more efficient, and efficient, by the way, isn't a bad word. Efficient means you get more people happy with less resources, which is a pretty good thing, environmentally speaking. Yeah, that's why profit is so important.
I have an easy counter-argument, an easy example to show that profit doesn't necessarily means good quality or efficiency, or, you know, the most amount of people being happy with the product. Just think about planned obsolescence. That makes a lot of profit because people buy more devices since they die out earlier than the normal life expectancy. So that generates a lot of profit, but it's not the best product because it will die earlier, and more people are going to be upset about it.
Yeah, Cav, there's no way to find out how long a light bulb should last. There's no light bulbs in nature. Humans make light bulbs. There's no reason
I'm
to
talking,
think that
I'm talking about
last for 100,000 hours when it only lasts 10,000 in this market.
I'm talking about planned obsolescence, when people know that the thing can last longer, but they nerf it on purpose so that it lasts less. That generates more profit, but it is not the best for the customer. The customer wants the thing that lasts as long as possible, not something that's nerfed on purpose to last less time.
Well, the thing is, there isn't actually any regulation to there's no unified plan of obsolescence. I don't think there's any markets where
actually
just
there was for example, okay, I'm going to give the example of the diamond mining industry. They the owners of diamond mines all banded together, and they control the amount of diamond output that comes out of those mines, so that diamonds remain expensive when diamonds aren't actually that expensive.
Right. Yeah.
This has also happened in the US with light bulbs. Actually, there was a literal organization which planned to make light bulbs last less, both every single competitor in the big market, because they realized they could all make more money like that.
Yeah, this is called cartelization, and basically it fails at the prisoner problem. You've heard about the prisoner problem? It's the idea that, well, you have two people and it's both in their best interest to betray the other because it's going to bring them the most profit. And you have the same problem with cartels, because it's always a lot more profitable to break out of your cartel and sell light bulbs that last 100,000 hours instead of 10,000 hours. And these people all the customers are going to come to you because you have the better light bulbs at the same price. And the reason why some of these cartels did exist for some time, I mean, you gave a good example. That's something that happened in the US. And the diamonds, I think, are expensive because of tariffs too, because countries cartelize to make diamonds expensive. But yeah, cartels fail at this problem. That's why we have so few of them. And when they do exist, it's often because regulation makes it hard for new companies to enter the market and underbid everybody. That's why I don't think the cartel idea has a lot of merit in this discussion. But I mean, look, planned obsolescence is something we can observe. We should think about how there's always competitors who also offer a product which might last longer, and people still make the choice to buy the light bulb that only lasts 10,000 hours because it might just be enough for them. And maybe they just trust the brand. Maybe they think this one looks better than the other. Maybe all their friends have this kind of light bulb. There are infinite reasons for a customer to choose one product over another, and to say that just because it lasts a little shorter and the manufacturer is at fault for this because they made it on purpose like this, it doesn't mean that they didn't make a good decision buying this product.
I think it's a bit disingenuous. Can I just say something? I think it's a bit disingenuous to say that there's always gonna be someone who produces the thing that lasts the most, because once a company starts gaining more because of planned obsolescence, then every other company has the incentive to also use planned obsolescence to gain more.
No, they don't. They want to get the customers who are jumping off the ship of the first company because they are getting their money's worth.
If it's okay, I would like to, it's outside technically of anything particularly, but in my hometown, there is one company that I think will be interesting from a view of the extremes. As the company was established in the 70s as it was cooperated by the workers. The workers had the mainstay in the decisions of the factory. It was a cement factory, but it was quite profitable cement factory, and even after the dissolution of the government ownership of the company still continues being profitable to this day. The company just sort of started expanding into other sectors of for example, they built an Olympic pool, which even to this day in the city is very often visited, and from around the city. It was operated by the company, which again by the workers, but it was a new business that started. And surprisingly enough, they went into a bakery. They built a bakery which produced bread for the town, and that too has since been privatized and still continues to be operating and profitable.
Okay.
Which is...
I've never heard this kind of story about a co-op. Yeah, interesting. I guess those were co-ops in Serbia back then, yeah.
Yeah, pretty much most big companies were a co-op, but private businesses still existed on like some levels. I do know that much.
Yeah. Well, many companies failed after look, Eastern Germany there's a reason they had this great recession over there while all the Western migrants were flooding in for all the stuff that was cheap there. And yeah, the companies were failing because they were kept afloat under the communist socialist government, and they weren't, and then they failed. And the Westerners came in and looking for jobs because they were trying to teach the people how to work in a capitalist mode of production. It was, crazy time. Yeah.
All right.
It's not often that you hear this kind of story.
All right. To go back to you saying that the person made a good decision for buying the light bulb that doesn't last long. All right. People are always working on their self-interest. Yeah, that's the core of people. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
however,
it's self-evident.
Yeah. However, you're gonna have things like marketing ideas that go into people's brains. For example, even you gave some examples like maybe all their friends have this light bulb. Then they are going. Then it's because it's not in their self-interest to get it. It's because the idea that their friends have all that light bulb makes them want that light bulb as well. It's not themselves.
Well, why not makes them happy? Look, marketing isn't like a magic spell put on people.
What Lina is trying to say is that the desire for this light bulb comes from an external thing instead of an internal thing. Like the external thing in this case being marketing, and their friends having that same light bulb. I think that's the core of it.
Even if the most high value item for the self is actually the light bulb that lasts long, the most high value item, because of the external reasons that the companies or society adds on to them, becomes something else, right? This hinders the efficiency of actually giving the people the best product.
Look, I think you're trying to make out like a perfect and ideal society in which everybody would be maximizing their self-interest. And I don't think this kind of society exists because nobody knows what it would look like. Like there's this socialist ideal of the ideal man, and he eats only vegetables and he works out and stuff. I don't know. That would probably be a good idea, right? If everybody would be eating their vegetables and be working out, right? But people don't. They go buy sweets and candy and cigarettes. And I think you're making the case that if it weren't for these external influences, people wouldn't buy like Snickers bars. They would only buy...
Oh, they would definitely buy Snickers bars. They like Snickers bars. It makes them happy.
But that's obviously also externally motivated because there's...
How?
Well, there's been thousands of years in human history where we haven't had Snickers bars, and was probably better for us, for our teeth at least.
Yeah, because it comes from an internal satisfaction of having the Snickers bar.
Well, same with cigarettes and with cool-looking light bulbs.
Nobody said that the ideal man under socialism would be someone that works hard and... I know it's an exaggeration you were saying, but... Huh?
It's a socialist idea to have this idea that you can prescribe an ideal society and know what it would look like without having the market work it out for itself. each for himself.
No,
I mean, okay,
what I'm
to be
saying is
fair.
that
Oh, go on.
what I'm saying is that the market should work it out in this way, and to give the most actual efficiency.
Well, maybe I was being unfair to your argument then, but still, I don't think any of us knows what the ideal consumer decisions are. We should have people work it out and just watch for each other's rights to property in that process. And I guess coming back to regulation, that's why I don't like regulation in any way. It's always putting, bemothering someone and taking away their right to decide, to choose a company to work with.
Regulation is also the reason for why when a worker is injured during the work time, they get compensated for their injuries, which is a good thing. Regulation is
something you could sort out privately, and you should, because it would offer people up choices.
Oh, sorry, what was that?
Yeah, you should do this privately. It's not just morally and ethically right when it comes to property rights. It's also better for everybody because you give the choices to individuals away from the state. Because what if the state decides the next day that we don't have workers' rights anymore? I mean, look, I think this was the first, when they started up with the Eastern Germany socialism experiment, right? There was 1953, a time when the government just raised all the quotas of the workers, and there were riots, right? And they brought in the Soviet tanks and, stamped them down. But still,
but that's removing regulations.
You don't always have benevolent governments like caring about your rights. That's why we need to sort it out for ourselves. We can't trust the benevolent leaders to regulate bad capitalists for us. It obviously doesn't work, and it doesn't, especially in socialist countries, when you look at the working standards there and the accident rates.
Okay, so I think you're calling regulating so you made the example of a government that doesn't care about workers' rights. That
Cavolo.
government would be removing regulations to make sure that the workers' rights aren't respected.
Yeah, it depends. Sometimes they just set quotas, sometimes they ignore them, sometimes they let the largest companies ignore them while keeping the small ones small by having them regulated, but the large ones can do whatever they want. Yeah.
All right. I think you're misunderstanding Tim's point a little. Basically, this is the same as the argument on the monopoly on violence, where if the state is a tool that is going to be used by people in good or bad ways, you have ways that regulation can be used which are consequentially good, and you have ways that regulation can be used which are consequentially bad. And who's empowered in the government at a time can decide that. And who's empowered in the government at the time can decide a lot of stuff, like genociding a bunch of people.
Right.
Fair point.
It was through legal means that Hitler came to power, after all, and his genocide was legal, after all.
Yes.
They made the laws, they manipulated the system, and it was legal under the system of the state.
The thing is, fortunately, democracy evolves, and we have systems in place to avoid, having the rise of genocidal maniacs to power.
We'll see.
Through even more supernatural structures that are not respected by like half the world. Yes.
Yeah, that's the way to get there. Just more government. We need more government.
Okay, but it works. Like it worked in Italy. There have been many parties that tried to bring back fascism after the fall of fascism, and they all got disbanded because new regulations in place to protect democracy.
All it takes is a referendum to change the constitution.
Yeah, well, Sometimes you just don't care about the
impossible that more than half the population would vote yes for, Putin in power.
Why do you think a piece of paper is going to protect your rights? It won't. I think COVID showed us this in most Western countries.
Didn't fascism originally get instated by just a bunch of people saying, give us fascism?
Yeah, literally.
Yeah. I mean, look, if you're talking about National Socialism, yeah, and fascism.
1926 March on Rome.
Yeah. I mean, they were pretty popular. Yeah. I mean, they did have a constitution in Italy before that, right? Anyway, I just point out that during COVID, most Western governments were very much overstepping their boundaries, their constitutions, and didn't protect our rights. It can't. It's just a piece of paper. And if enough people say, I don't care, then nobody cares. And the majority is going to trample over the minority. I mean,
you know what they say? Treaty is but a piece of paper to the fascists.
Oh, that's a good quote. You have a name for that?
Can I just about the COVID thing? The governments could have just kept abusing their power, I guess is the way you put it. They could have just kept going, but at some point they stopped. Although they could have just, So why did they stop? That was because we live in a democracy where public opinion is important, to have power. And so they aren't incentivized to keep taking that power for too long. So the system actually works.
It was also
I would say the system works when there's evidently been overstepping of the constitutions of several countries I know about, I'm included.
I would also say that freedom of movement and expression and whatnot is internationally recognized human right.
Right. Yeah.
Which most countries have signed into, and most countries accept international treaties to work above their laws in a sort of state between law and constitution.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, I think there's a good point behind there. They did have to stop, and for the fearmongers saying, "Oh, this is going to be permanent military dictatorship," they were proven wrong. But still, it's not like any government is impervious to public opinion. Even a monarchy, a dictatorship, they care a lot about public opinion. It's very important because at some points, the barricades get stormed. Yeah,
it is significantly less important in a dictatorship because you already have all the power concentrated in the hands of few people. So public opinion isn't that important. It's more important to keep the military under your thumb and stuff like that. But the general consensus of the population isn't something to look for in a dictatorship. But in a democracy, that is the primary thing that puts someone in power. So it's the primary thing that you're looking to appease.
Yeah.
Well, what if the general population is stupid?
Oh my God.
We can rephrase that to what if the general population in most...
Okay, no, can I say something, Lina? I wasn't expecting that from you, of all people, because...
that's a take, how not?
That's a take that authoritarian people use to justify dictatorships. The population is stupid, so they need a strong leader.
That's your consciousness.
No, that's your interpretation of it. It's
it's the overused take from authoritarian people.
But look at Romania, for example. If we've already talked about this, and we've already made this exact same point because everyone here is majorly conservative. Sure, the Constitution might protect this and that, but where's my my right to marry someone of like the same birth sex, for example.
I would like to add, I understand Lina's concern, but I would like to rephrase that instead of what are the people are stupid. The people are, I would say they're not stupid, but in, for example, a lot of our old socialist countries, people are very old, and a lot of old people didn't have that extensive of an education, and their education was in governments which did enforce a line that they have to go by thinking. So a lot of this probably would be fixed with time.
Thing is, it's not fixed with time because even the young population, like when our fascist party first came into parliament, the biggest demographic wasn't the old people; it was young people.
Huh.
It was like 20 to like 30 age, like, you know.
Okay, hear me out. That is fixable with hear me out, propaganda.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Just do a bunch of propaganda.
I mean,
thing is, we do. Everyone branded them as fascists, and they still are gaining support.
Huh. Yeah, that's Well.
Then that's a skill issue. I'm sorry, that's bad propaganda you're doing if it's not working.
Yeah, but are they actual fascists? Because propaganda doesn't work if you're just lying all the time, right?
Well, let's see. They want to reintroduce military service. They literally call their lead, like some of them literally call their leader the captain, which is what the Iron Guard called its leader back in the day. They literally overplayed at turning democracy. Their co-president literally wrote articles for the neo-legionary newspaper and so on and so forth.
Okay. Wow. That I guess that sounds kind of fascist. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a common tale with Western European countries where there's a right-wing party and they get branded as fascists, and so it works for like 5 years and then nobody cares anymore because it's been done to death. Yeah.
Yeah, they like.
Oh, go on.
They like to play that conservative, fake libertarian line, but their literal like manifesto says like family, a religion, yada yada, like literally the same line as our traditional fascists.
Yeah. Look, I think it's wrong to brand fascist. Like, I mean, it's always conservatives. They always get put into the same pot with fascists just because of the family aspect, because both of them like family. But it breaks apart as soon as you talk about religion, because from what I know, the fascists weren't very religious at all. I mean, socialists were actively fighting with the church, and they didn't have a lot of Catholics supporting them. It was more of the Protestants supporting them. And
this was not a case in Croatia, I would like to mention.
Yeah, this was not the case in Romania either. Our fascists were literally called the Legion of Archangel Michael.
Oh.
Oh wow.
Oh wow. Oh, that's okay. That's
they literally used religious imagery as their like sword.
I was gonna say religion is more of a tool to politics, so it doesn't really matter if the fascist is for religion or against religion. It's just a tool that they can use. I don't think that religion plays like an ideological role into fascism.
Yeah, I don't think so either, and I think it's
like it's a tool to gather people. You know, if you know that most of your country is religious, then you're gonna use religion to gather votes, I guess, or consensus.
Yeah. Hey guys, I realized that we haven't actually finished discussing any single point, and I might have had most of the time talking because I have trouble putting my thoughts into words, but you bet all of them are very much in there and very correct. Yeah, but we've been talking for I think over an hour now.
Yeah, I was planning this episode to be a bit longer because this debate is huge. Like we're talking about whether regulation is good or bad. So I was expecting this to take on a lot of time. If you want, we can move on with the news, or we can keep going. It's as you want.
Yeah, I'm fine keeping going. I'm just gonna turn on my light bulb.
All right. Well, in that case, I do wanna give my takes because I didn't really explain very well where I stand on this. Yes, I like regulation. I'm gonna get back to the thing about governments not caring about property, because there's a lot of stuff I wanted to say there that I didn't say. Governments and the public sector and all that, they are people, and whether they care about something or not depends on them as people. I don't think that the private sector cares more about their private property than the government cares about their property. I mean, they both have property, they both have incentives to sell it because they gain money from it. They both have they're both managed by people at the end of the day. So yeah, I disagree with what Tim said that governments don't have incentives to sell. Of course, they have incentives to sell. Like, oh, you disagree with that?
All right, let's start. Let's get a bit into it. I don't fully disagree, but at the same time, it also depends on what part of the government it is, because the government will care about some things which are beneficial to it and some things which are not beneficial. And now, what's the government's actual goal as a state? It is to remain in power, obviously. So
that's part of it.
You're gonna get a lot of maintenance on things like the military, public order, all of that, and what it needs for public opinion to stay in its favor so it remains in power. So, for example, if people like public transport, they're going to maintain public transport well.
Yeah, exactly.
But if people don't care about something and they throw trash at it, like Tim's example suggested, they're not going to care.
And in that case, they could just sell that land to someone else.
Well, I mean, where's the motivation? Why should they?
Because they would gain money from it. I mean, they gain nothing but... Okay, they gain nothing by just owning that piece of land, since they're not doing anything with it. They're not, they might as well just sell it, just like a private owner would do.
Look, sometimes, that's why I did this long response. I'm going to keep this very short. Sometimes the state does sell assets, but it's usually like huge parts of their asset pool at once and for very low price usually. But they don't care about these small decisions to sell small parts of their property, because that would require somebody to make a judgment on whether or not this is a good decision. Also, looking into the future, you might need this this piece of land. So if it was privately owned, you'd have to make this decision, right? Do I keep the land, maybe sell it for more, or use it for something or whatever? Might go up in value, might go down, or do I sell it now? This is called speculation. And people try to speculate because they want to gain the most profit they can, right? They make a decision based on what is going to profit them most. The government has no reason to maximize profits. This is why
I don't think that's a bad thing, actually.
Well, they aren't going to sell their piece of land for a lot, or they aren't going to sell it at all. And that's not good for anybody living nearby this plot of land filling up with garbage. I mean, that's why these are the problems with public spaces deteriorating, right? It's not like nobody's harmed there. And especially when you think about what the good would be that could be done with these places littering, some of our cities, there's a
But
couple
the
of
thing
spots.
that usually happens, at least here in my country, the thing that usually happens when a place is, is littered and it's not taken care of, the thing that usually happens is the people that live nearby protest, and they ask the city, the commune to take care of it. They make a petition, and then the commune either sells it to private owner, or it starts taking care of it, or it does something with it.
So they only care about their public opinion, as I said.
Yeah, but like that is a motivation to do stuff.
Yeah, that can happen too, right? Yeah, sure. This can happen as well. I just think it's more efficient when people do this privately.
I don't know about that. I mean, when we talk about services like for example, let's talk about trains, because it's the first thing that comes to my mind. Like, publicly owned train companies and private owned train companies. If you look at most countries in the world, there's not like there. If you look at the data, you don't find that private companies are always more efficient than public companies, and you don't find that public companies are always more efficient than private companies.
Actually,
well, here's the thing. That's probably because the government can put restrictions on private companies in order to make them less efficient.
Right. Yeah. They usually make a single private company the monopoly. That's what our railway system consists of. So they're the only ones allowed to operate, but they're also private. They're public.
Here you have the National Railway Company, and then you have private companies, and they actually do some auctions for who gets what route.
Here we do have our national company Trenitalia, and we do have also private companies, and they compete with each other. I don't know how things are in other countries, in the sense of whether they compete or not, whether the public sector competes with the private sector or not.
If I can add about both Serbia and the UK in this regard, since they're a complete opposite ends, where Serbia is pretty much all operated by, I think it's a state-owned company. I'm not exactly sure, but we have a company which has a monopoly. And well, I like to add, unlike the German Deutsche Bahn, they're actually on time, usually.
Okay.
And as for England, it has multiple companies, but they all have their sort of turf, so to say. They all have regions in which they operate, and they don't exactly compete with each other, which who offers better services. They just sort of all work in like a symbiotic operation, I guess.
Yeah, that's state-owned, isn't it?
No, I think
no, it's all private.
UK, yeah.
Thank you, Megaret. The operation of the tracks, the actual,
that I don't really know.
I'm pretty sure that's one of the things that our state company would do, and so I'm not surprised that your trains are a lot better than ours. It's not nice what they did to our train service. Yeah, it's usually that way. They have like track operators, like operating the actual railroad tracks. That's often one company monopoly in Western countries. And sometimes you have some competition when it comes to running the actual trains on there.
Yeah, here the actual like track operation is monopoly as well, and generally, like, and on top of that, all of the prices, even for private companies, are subsidized by the state.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's also another thing. Subsidies.
Yeah. So they well, you have the same price for all of them, uh, but you also have varying degrees of like service quality actually. So I tend to go with private companies when I get the chance for the obvious reason that well, you see, the goddamn this I actually get the same price for like a much nicer bed to sleep in while I go across the country.
Nice. That's nice. Yeah, that's the kind of stuff I'm talking about. I guess it's just important for there to be competition. It doesn't even matter if it's private or public, because if there's no competition, you don't have market forces, and there's no reason for people to improve their services.
We have a chatter.
Oh, nice.
They say Deutsche Bahn had a loss of 1.2 billion euro in the last half a year.
Huh. Yeah, is that the stock price, or I'm sorry, I'm not sure. It has rose. I'm gonna read this count for myself. Could you repeat that?
Deutsche Bahn had a loss of 1.2 billion euros in the last half a year.
Oh, a loss. Right, yeah. Yeah, pretty sure they're also getting subsidies all the
definitely.
time. Yeah, that's usually how it goes. They still lose money and they just get larger subsidies or whatever. People call for it to be reabsorbed into the state. It's not gonna fix anything. Might make things better actually, because having like a single, it's even listed on the stock exchange. That's the other thing. You get like a company that's part of the state, like state railway. You privatize it, put it on the stock exchange, and then you give it subsidies and shit. This is peak corporatism. Doesn't help anybody.
Well, we do agree that corporatism is bad. That's the thing.
Do we agree, us two?
I mean, I think everybody should agree that corporatism is bad.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Thing is,
it's like corporatism.
What?
They should, at least. It would be consistent with their ideology. Yeah, trade unions, big corporations like public entities, and government working together. That's corporatism. And there's a lot of people who like this, actually. A lot of people sitting in the EU right now who like this. And they think this is a good idea for controlling society. Having trade unions, big corporations, and the government figure out how everybody on this continent should be allowed to live.
Is the government really considered a corporation?
Well, they do sit at one table with trade unions and corporations, right? That's what a lot of politicians in the 21st century pride themselves on. Oh, we take everybody to the table. We want people of all the requisite like stands of society, and we're going to talk to each other. We're going to figure out a solution, then we're going to force it on everybody. That's the mode of politics in the 21st century. I mean, I've worked for a politician. I should say at this point, I should mention it at this point in the podcast.
Is it really a forced solution if everybody is welcome to the table to discuss the solution?
Obviously it is, because just because you make a compromise doesn't mean that it's the will of everybody. And if you believe so, then
it's not possible to benefit everybody at once, because people have conflicting interests.
And this is why we need this thing symbolized by the word freedom, right? That's why we need freedom to choose.
Okay, but some freedoms are limited because, if I was 100% free, I would be free to harm other people too. So my freedom ends where the freedom of someone else begins. And
I mean, we could just say people have rights.
Yeah.
I mean, isn't that something better to say than to say it ends where someone else's freedom begins? I'd say you have the freedom, you have freedom by nature, right, by God or whatever, and you have rights.
Yes.
But those rights have limits.
What? Sorry?
Well, what's your take on rights as a centrist?
Oh, yeah, right.
Well,
that's interesting.
Rights are something that everybody inherently has, and as the human rights have progressed over time, we all have gained some rights, which we all should have on paper. Rights such as freedom of expression, freedom of religion, freedom of movement, and so on. But those all rights have some limits, and pretty much in all of these, the rights that all our governments, conventions, that our governments have accepted, have some baked in limitations to our rights and to our freedoms.
Yeah.
So again, the piece of paper.
Yeah, piece of paper but usually piece of paper is symbolic of somebody's backing. In this case, the UN, which is pretty.
Well, the UN doesn't have a monopoly in violence, but I mean, state governments have. I mean, the subsidiary governments have, national governments.
Okay, so the charter says something else now. Moritz Faber, I think. Maybe it's one of Tim's friends because they say, "Dear host, you just derived the natural law." The problem I have with that is that, yes, maybe it's natural law, whatever you want to call it, but people aren't gonna just respect this law just, out of their free will, or else we wouldn't have murders and crime.
Well, just because we have murders and crime and government taxing people doesn't mean that rights don't exist. They still do. We have
they exist. The thing is, the government is put in place to make sure that those rights are respected.
Well, they can't when their whole purpose and their definition is that they get to trample our rights by the means of violence, which they put a monopoly on. I mean, seriously, you disarm a population, you take away their rights to so many things, and you tell them that you're protecting them. This is the biggest scam.
Why would...
I mean, look, this is the biggest scam in the history of humanity. Government protecting your rights while taking them away.
I mean...
Who believes this?
We have a disagreement here. First of all, why would the population have the natural right to be armed and use that violence to that arms? Oh my God! Use that tool to, inflict violence on others.
Well, I think it's reasonable to believe that we all own our own bodies, because it's self-evident when you ask me, and you can ask me for further justification, but I just go off there. If you own your own body, you own what you produce, you own what you trade for what you produce by your own hands, combining your hands with, your labor with land or capital. Those are the three factors of production. The only thing Marx said that was true. And you create something, it's now yours, right? Your homestead, piece of land, previously unowned, it's yours.
Yes.
This makes sense to people. This is very intuitive, I think.
Yes. Go on.
So you trade with people and you acquire a weapon of some sort. Might be a sharpened stick, might be a gun. I think should be yours to do with as you please, as long as you don't break the rights of others, at which point you enter the realm of aggression. And we know how to deal with aggression. Aggression is a constant of human societies. Some are more aggressive, some are less aggressive, and we need to figure out systems to deal with people being aggressive.
Yeah,
This doesn't mean that we don't have rights. It's just
okay,
that some
but
people
the
are
best
aggressive.
way to deal with this aggression is preventing the aggression in the first place. So,
which you do by making a healthy society, not by taking away people's rights. Because let's
Yeah.
take a look at America, which I'm guessing is your example for why why the government needs to take away people's rights. Okay, but like the issue there isn't the guns, because there's many places that have guns and don't have the same gun violence. The issue there is the mental health of the citizens, which is bad because their healthcare system is fucking corporatist, and it completely monopolized. It's like it monopolized in some companies that have all this private insurance and basically gatekeep the mental health care of the citizens, which turns the citizens into, well, violent people.
Okay, that's fair point. That's a fair point. But then, the solution is to, make sure. Oh my god, I have issues phrasing my thoughts.
I will say that the United Kingdom also does have national health service, and it still has a big problem with violence.
Oh yeah, because the National Health Service is shit.
I mean, yeah, it doesn't have to do anything with violence, does it? I'm not sure. Weren't you just talking about violence?
Yeah.
Violence.
Yeah, okay. So I agree with Lina that the best solution would be to create a healthy society.
Yeah. Oh, right. Talking about healthy society. Yeah.
Yeah. But also, in the meantime, it takes time to create a healthy society. In the meantime, the second best thing is to, revoke the access to guns. Because, okay, you were saying if someone makes a gun, it's theirs because they made it, all right? But,
yeah,
buying a gun, you didn't make that gun, you bought it. So if you make sure that people can't buy guns, it's not an infringement of their rights.
Can I use Marx to debunk you
whatever.
right now? Okay, one. Marx said the workers should be armed, based. Two, transitionary stages.
Yeah.
Where you say you take away people's rights, but you're supposed to slowly transition into that healthy society. You don't take away people's rights while transitioning away into that healthy society. You're supposed to give them the rights at first.
Yeah, that's a huge scope. And also, I think my definition of a healthy society is one where we are aware of each other's rights and we don't constantly put them into question and value other things like the majority opinion and democracy over individual rights. That's what I would call a healthy society.
I don't
that's
think
why I didn't get
the thing is
take on, people need to get healthy. No, they need to get educated on property rights.
Yeah.
I think that's the quickest way to get to a healthy society.
The thing is, I don't agree that regulating the market of guns is an infringement on the consumer's freedom.
Yeah.
Consumers' rights, I mean.
It's obvious to me that if you're not allowed to own something under threat of going into a cage, your rights are being trampled on. I mean, you didn't believe me earlier when I said that when you trade something with someone else, you're trading property and the title of property ownership changes hands. And so you still own what you traded for, right? I mean, you wouldn't call into question someone buying like a Coke, and just because it's his money that just left his hands and the Coke is something new that just entered his hands, he doesn't own it. Of course he owns it. He traded it.
Yeah, he owns it after he buys it. The thing is, it's not an infringement to stop someone from buying something in the first place.
Oh, that goes down to the most basic concepts of rights. Like, I mean, look, the most important right after property rights is the right to freely associate. And free association means that you get to form contracts with whoever you want, whenever you want, and put in there whatever you want.
I have
And
an
that's something
issue
I
with
know you
that.
don't.
That's the...
Yeah, you don't like this because you don't like freedom, because you don't like free people. And that's a problem. I think people like you are a problem for society, because without contractual freedom, we will never have the improvements we need to come to a better place than we are right now. And I guess this is the key problem with the topic we started with, which is regulation, because the one thing that all regulation aims at is preventing the free association of people. This is why regulation is fundamentally anti-freedom, and it always has to be. Yeah, I mean,
the only way in which regulation can be pro-freedom is if you use freedom in a quantitative manner, and you say that it gives more freedom to like take away something and yada yada, which is not exactly completely fallacious, because you say, the question of rights that comes because someone's freedom to their own life is bigger than someone's freedom to, I don't know, kill someone, because that freedom just doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Because it's fallacious. So you take away some quote-unquote freedom for other freedom. Thing is, people will call the freedom of association a quote-unquote freedom in order to take it away for other freedoms.
Right.
And that is their justification.
I mean, the thing is, you can take away freedom by freely associating with people as well, in my opinion. I don't think that freely associating with people is a net gain of freedom for everyone.
How so? Giving an example.
Scams, for example. Like when you fall into a scam, you're consenting to, losing your money.
I mean, yeah, it is.
You're freely associating with the scammer, but in the end, you get scammed.
Yeah, and how is? I mean, that is obviously bad. But how is that like an affront to freedom? What freedom do you lose by doing that?
Oh yeah, I confused freedom with rights again. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, people do. People often do.
No, it's
and see, in this situation,
I have an issue with words.
You just kill the scammer.
Let me rephrase that. Oh yeah, of course, Cedo, of course. Wouldn't expect any less from you. Let me rephrase that. What I meant to say is that I don't think that freedom of association guarantees that, oh my god, guarantees that your rights are being respected.
Yeah.
Like there is no infringement of freedom, but there can be infringement of rights.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you have your own private definition of rights, maybe, yeah, sure. But freedom of association is perfectly, what's the word I'm looking for? Compatible with property rights. In fact, it follows from property rights. And I think you'd struggle to find an example in which they don't.
The thing I said about the scams, you get scammed and that's an infringement of your rights because you have the right to your property. And when you're being scammed,
you choose to freely give away your property.
Yes, but you're getting scammed from your property. Like, I don't know how to phrase this.
So people should make an informed decision so that they don't get scammed.
I love you.
Yes,
Lina.
that's a solution.
Lina is so great, this podcast. I'm not sure why we didn't work together more.
I mean, okay, Tim, does that mean that you're slightly leaning to the left now?
Well, look, I've already exhausted myself in the first 30 minutes of this podcast. Now I'm just slowly gaining I don't know. So I guess I'm warming up to the ideas of the libertarian left, but that's because Lina is an actual libertarian leftist and not a leftist pretending to be someone who's pro-freedom, like a libertarian socialist, which just doesn't exist.
So you're actually challenging your previous belief that leftists cannot be libertarian truly.
Yeah, I guess I am. Well, thanks for
Wow,
reminding me.
that's some progress. That's some progress.
Oh, don't get me started on progress. That's the buzzword. Yeah, I guess I am. Yeah, thanks for noticing.
Wow, okay. That's an unexpected...
Well, yeah, I was thinking this podcast was going nowhere, but actually accomplished something.
Yeah, unexpected development.
The character development is intense.
Okay, so we have other messages in chat.
Oh, we do?
Yeah, first of all, dear host, again, how can you still be a communist since Tim talked to you several times? Well, we're not here to convince each other. We're here to just debate, understand each other's viewpoints, maybe convince the audience if that's something we're interested in. But we're not here to convince each other, so that's why Tim hasn't talked me into stopping being a communist. And the next question is, why is Tim in the swear word quadrant? I'm not reading that. I don't like swear words. New here. That's because I can't control Discord placing us where we are. We tried it several times, but we couldn't control it, so the left and right is flipped for the lib section, unfortunately. Yeah, this is streamed on Discord. I'm very lazy. I don't want to do editing, so that was the simplest solution I could find.
Hey, look, there's a new comment.
New comment. I think this is referring to what we were saying earlier. You mean that the free cooperation between individuals doesn't guarantee a good result for a specific individual? That's right. Nobody can ever guarantee such a thing.
That's a very good point.
Well,
right.
yeah, but I'm arguing, maybe not for scams, but I'm arguing that it doesn't guarantee that rights are being protected as well.
The only way that rights would not be protected is if somebody chose to infringe on rights, which would put them in a state of, breaking the NAT practically.
No, hold on. I mean, look, you could have private law enforcement. There's good reasons to believe that private law enforcement would work a lot better than having the state come in as the monopoly in violence and try to enforce property rights, which is kind of a good idea when you think about it from afar, but then again, you're trying to have a government and still have the government limit itself by its own means of violence, which is never going to work. So yeah.
Okay, I have a dumb question maybe, but I'm very dumb, I think. What's the difference? I'm gonna sound crazy to you, but what's the difference between private police and mafia? Because in both cases you pay someone to protect you, and that someone doesn't work under the government.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, but
the mafia has better aesthetics.
Yes,
Yeah.
that too. That too.
Sure.
That's very true, 100%.
But your description of the mafia just now reminded me of something else, and it's not private police agencies. I mean, it's very much the state. You've got this organization, right, of people. They're organized, and they're putting people like in situations where they say, okay, look, you're gonna have to pay us this protection money, or bad things are gonna happen to you. This sounds
I
like
mean, yeah,
the state.
it literally is. Like,
Yeah, that's what the state does.
you are taxed under the threat of violence.
Thank you. Actually, let's just, for this moment of unity, read Orwell quotes to each other and then kiss.
You?
I mean, yeah, there's some good ones in there, like how the policeman is the natural enemy of the worker.
Yep.
Yeah, but you haven't
Policemen
answered...
are class traitors.
Very nice.
You haven't answered my question though. What's the difference between private police and state police? Like,
okay,
because
well,
or mafia or whatever, because they see the same thing going on for every...
Well, look, the private police has actually, I mean, look, they could operate as a mafia. They don't have to. The mafia is actually defined as a group of people who, like, I mean, they get protection money. That's what the mafia does.
Mm-hmm.
Private security could prey on people and like shake them down, like the mafia does. They could choose not to, right? Either they become the mafia or they become something else, something we'd call private security agencies. And I'd say that market forces, there's good reasons in a free market to become a private security agency to protect people from robbers and, yes, mafias. There's good reasons too, because there's obviously a market for security. People want to be secure, and they might not want to defend themselves, right? Because you're putting your life at risk, and you're having to have guns in your own home, right? That's the number one talking point of anti-gun advocates. Well, I don't want to keep a shotgun in my house to be safe. Well, that's why you get a security agency, and of course insurance. That's the other thing. So people get insurance, people get like insured as they do for other things, and so now the insurance agency has a reason to try to protect them, because if they don't protect them, something happens to their clients, they're going to have to pay out money, right? And that's how private law enforcement could work.
Okay, but
there's also the fact that like if private law enforcement was to turn into a mafia, they would literally just break the NAP.
Yeah, and then they'd become.
Then they'd be targeted by everyone that does not want to break.
But the mafia does like exist. They didn't get like. Look, I have sympathy for this idea that everybody would turn on them, but there is reason to believe that there would always be bad guys like the mafia, and so you need good guys with guns to protect against them.
Oh yeah, you definitely need someone more trained than the average citizen to protect against them, because you lose less lives if you have someone more trained.
Okay.
Sure.
And the thing is that someone more trained, if they're from the state, they kind of like tend to collude with the mafia on like corruption.
I was asking because the way I see it, you pay taxes to be protected by, the law, by the police that enforces the law. So if you don't pay taxes, you're on your own, right? You don't get protection from the police. Anything can happen to you. It's the same thing if you don't pay private police service, whatever. You're on your own. You have to protect yourself from every other criminal. So,
thing is, if you don't pay taxes to the mafia or to the state, you kind of get arrested.
Or just yeah.
I would like to add that most police forces are a lot less trained than pretty much most private companies, mainly because of the very low requirements they put on police officers.
What's that like in your country? Is it this, little training
I don't think most police officers here have actually fired any of their sidearms.
Huh.
Because the sidearms have been sold into the civilian market too, and in civilian market they've been known for part breakages on very often.
In Romania you have multiple like police forces. You also have like the gendarmerie, which is basically like a semi-military level police force, which is actually trained and stuff, and they're like also used in like riot control and all of that. So like those are actually trained, and like you actually have to go to like an academy specifically for that, and so on and so forth. But at the same time, if you have like a private company that trains their people, they're going to train them very well, because they don't want to lose their precious employees, do they?
Right.
Well, the state, well, people are born every year.
Well said. Well said. Yeah. Are we still going to do a news today, or?
Yeah, we should talk about the UK riots. In fact, one of our chatters much earlier, said these riots in UK are remarkable. Do you guys think this is all? I think it means. Do you guys think this will all end up in secession? Do you see these riots in Germany for the future too? I think that's directed to Tim mostly.
All right.
I mean, look, we've had this problem with refugees in the entire western side of Europe. I can see why the Brits will see these kind of protests earlier than we do, because our police force is a lot better trained. That's one of the things I was going to recur on. Our police is very well trained. They can deal with, the violence in the cities being a lot worse now than was 10 years ago, evidently so, not just from stats, but just from going around the city. In the UK, not so much. They didn't even carry guns in most towns until a couple of years ago. I don't think they carry guns in many cities in the UK, so they're prepared to deal with all the violence. And the Brits are fed up. I could see the same thing happening in my country, but we're also a lot more conditioned. So you see the Brits, they talk about how we are not right-wing, or they do this ironic thing where they go, let's go right-wing. Or have you heard of this? Mm-hmm. Have you seen the social media feeds?
Yeah.
You seen them?
Yeah. After this, I'm also going to give a quick rundown of how the protest actually started, because I think that's a bit important.
Yes.
Yeah, I could see the same thing happening in Germany, but people would be very, very. They need to distance themselves from the far right in order to not, go crazy, because they've been fed since with the mother's milk that like our constitution is the best thing since sliced bread. It's we need to protect our democracy. We need to protect individual rights, and the worst thing you can be is a right-winger. So, that's why it would be pretty hard to store this kind of fear into people, that they'd be willing to risk their jobs and their livelihood and their standing in their communities, and their small garden society in order to, protest against this. But it could happen, because things are getting worse. Thank you. Always take my time. Go on, please, Lina.
All right. Quick summary of how it all started. So a black man stabbed a few people. 3 kids died, and a lot more were injured, and some in critical condition. Now, the media, and this was also pirated by a Russian media channel, said that this was a Muslim man fresh off a boat that was on the list of the MI5. This was a lie, because the police identified it as a black man from Cardiff who was allegedly not a Muslim. I saw that somewhere, but I haven't had the time to fact check it. And the reason why his identity was kept from the public was because he was a minor. He was 17, and the court needed to rule that they can publish the identity, which led many people to believe that this is just a cover-up. Now, because of this, there's actually a lot of anti-Muslim violence. It started with a riot against a mosque because, well, mosques and Muslims, obviously. And the police intervened because, well, it's kind of like their job to intervene when somebody tries to destroy property. And the protesters set a police van on fire, injured a bunch of officers, yada yada. More protests, more riots, looting. Then there's also the counter protesters. Then there's also, I've seen videos, although I haven't fact checked this, of armed minorities going against to protect their stuff, you know. But obviously, because of all the hysteria, they're kind of in a race for. And they also target innocent people. Both sides target innocent people. Like there's videos of protesters literally stopping cars and checking the skin color of the driver and taking them out and beating them up.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I haven't seen any of those, yeah. But sure, I'm sure this is going on.
Yeah. And like yelling at them, they're pedophiles and so on, just for the color of their skin. And this is happening on both sides.
I'm
both
sure,
sides
yeah.
are doing all of this. And Keir Starmer decided to go with the standard liberal, let's protect the law of the land, and says the police will handle all this. We'll protect minorities, and obviously calling them far-right thugs because, well, they kind of associate with the far right. And then you have people who are like, is it far right to like not want your children to be stabbed and so on and so forth?
Yeah.
Now, one thing I would also like to point out is that in crime statistics in the UK, 25% of victims of knife violence are actually black, despite being only like 4% of the population, which means they are disproportionately targeted.
Yeah,
so keep that in mind when talking about like, oh, black on white violence, yada yada. There's lots of black on black violence and white on black violence as well.
Sure. Yeah, that's usually the case with these kind of statistics. Yeah, but there's also a lot of violence among themselves in these kind of communities. Yeah.
Yep. So overall, this lie that was parroted by Russian media kind of sparked an immense incident, and there have been riots daily, which also included a lot of looting. And what we ask is, how associated is this with the far right, aside from the fact that it's literally organized by some far right organizations?
Yeah, I could see that. I could see there's I mean, look, this is the wet dream of people who actually want far right parties in politics. I'd wished for something like this to happen. I wouldn't want anyone to be killed, but you know, it would be good for there to be an actual display of people being angry on the streets. And there's a lot of political interest in there. So I could see why these kind of flames would be stoked. I mean, imagine if this would have happened like 4 weeks ago before the UK elections. I mean, Nigel Farage would have probably gotten into Parliament with a lot more seats than he did. And he would have wished for this. I could see that. Yeah. But you can't really like bring... 3 little kids were murdered. This is something that happened. It's not something that was instigated.
Yeah. The thing that was instigated was the targeting of Muslims.
Yeah. I mean, I guess, but they did release the identity of the attacker after a while, right? And it turned out to
after like 2 days.
Yeah, and it turned out to be like the rumor turned out to be correct, didn't it?
No, he was allegedly not Muslim.
Huh.
Yeah, it was
okay.
right.
So
no, he was allegedly a Christian who was also born in the UK.
No way. Huh? I didn't even get that side of the story. And that's the testament to how narrative can be different from person to person. Well, I don't live there, but still. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, but we bring the fact-checked news, so I'm gonna, fact-check it right now.
Well, yeah. Well, you fact-check that. I mean, yeah, could you see this kind of stuff happen in your country, in your countries? I mean, Cheeto and Lina, you live in countries with a lot less migration, but at the same time, don't your people also have a bit more respect before like mass migration? Because Brits, I mean, they didn't care for a long time. It had to come to this for them to erupt in violent protest.
Well, I would say for us, we do dislike, since of course the Balkan nations are all for naturally conservative. Well, most are. There is of course that hate against migrants, but since we are just how do we say, we're bottom of the hill, and Germany and like all the Western nations are like the top of the hill. So everybody just rests here briefly and then continues on their way uphill.
Yeah. Because of welfare.
So we don't have that much problem of people staying here making chaos. So most of our problems are of different kind. But specifically, if the problem is with Muslims because of, for example, 2000, I think, was it 6 or 8? There was a big pogrom on Kosovo against Serbians, and a bunch of churches were burned and whatnot. So in retaliation to that, a bunch of mosques in Belgrade have been attacked by protesters.
Okay, that's in your country, Belgrade?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Belgrade, yeah. So
right, I should know this.
It can happen.
Sure.
It's not out of the ordinary.
Here, there's not really that much. Well, I live in a big city, so I do see immigrants, and they tend to work in like more bottom end jobs, like food delivery or like retail, like low paying supermarkets, yada yada. And yeah, they take that part of the workforce. Here we have we tend to do like quota immigrations, like you have to like you get a work permit, you get all that, yada yada, and that's how you generally like stay in the country. So we don't really have that much of an issue because all of them are working, housed, and so on and so forth. And they also need to provide proof that they can have housing to get the job, and it's a web of different things that leads to them all being working.
So I wonder, do your people respect working immigrants, or is it more that they tolerate them?
Mostly tolerate. We are we're like pretty conservative here as well. Although the only ones who like actually actively dislike them are like the fascist party, because obviously they're very anti-immigration. In general, they're also like anti-Hungarian. I remember that time they literally said that the Hungarian party should be disbanded. So we also have like other ethnic tensions that happen with the Hungarian independence and like the Hungarian area of autonomy in the center of the country, where there's like 90% Hungarians, but they're in the middle of Romania.
Okay.
So you also have that's where you have more tension than with immigrants here.
Okay, well, that's interesting, because you think that they would be ethnically a lot more related. Is there something like a historical feud between the Hungarians and the Romanians?
Yes, very much so.
Sorry, you could probably teach me about Balkan.
Basically, because a lot of modern Romania, like this area we call Transylvania, was owned by Hungary, but there were a lot of Romanians there. We took it in a war, and they didn't like that.
Okay, Yeah.
And a lot of Hungarians also remained here, while a lot of them were either moved mixed around by the communist government, or they left on their own, because the communist government would do this thing where, oh, you graduated here, let's send you to the other side of the fucking country.
Yeah.
Because they just like mixing people around.
Yeah, it's one of the things authoritarian governments do.
I'm sorry to say that I wasn't really paying much attention because I was trying to fact check the piece of news.
Don't worry, I was just giving a small Romanian history lesson.
Okay.
Yeah, we didn't get to the Serbian ethnic relationships, sadly, which I'm sure would be. So, you don't have any ethnic tensions in your country, do you?
It depends on what you count as a country.
Kosovo.
Very nice. Oh, that's a nice answer.
Kosovo is, the entire place is run on an apartheid regime. So if you are, this goes deep. So it is so bad. Like, for example, there is this one village which is usually known for their vineyards and whatnot. And some vineyards run across like internal like city borders. Yeah. So they can use the vineyards to an extent. The stuff that's like over one hill that falls into the other city, you can't use that or they get fined by the government. And some, services like schooling and, for example, healthcare are sometimes completely inaccessible, and you have to go to the Serb-controlled majority up north to actually get like insulin.
Okay, so it's actually like apartheid. I mean, yeah, that's the way.
Basically, you have to remain with your your enclaves, or you get not exactly violently attacked, but you get sanctioned in multitudes of ways.
That's interesting. I mean, look, you wouldn't expect this to be something in Europe, right? You talk about there's countries with like a very plain, obvious racial history, like the United States. So you have some parts of the US where there's a lot of black people, and then the government services are worse in these areas where there's a lot of black people, right? It's simple, it's easy to understand. You wouldn't expect this to be something that would be happening right in the center of Europe. Nobody explained it to me like this before, so that's why I'm hearing about it.
Or like, I would say I didn't get like all this information from like news sources. I mainly just got it from the people who live there. Like, I did go on a trip there too, so I think there is a lot less bias in that sense. Or who knows, they might be just trying to sell me a story because
I think there's credence to that with the history your country had.
Yeah. But it's nothing new. This was, for example, post-World War II in pretty much a lot of the parts of old Austria-Hungary. This is the northern part of Serbia. They used to be a lot of German minorities there, but after the war, you genocided us, get out of here. No more Germans.
And that happened in most of Europe. That happened in most of Europe.
So, nothing is new.
Yeah, I mean, I would expect something like this, all this stuff to happen in Europe because, just think about the blatant racism against Roma people that all Europeans have.
Yeah, I mean, not all of them. The Roma probably don't. And what about the Sinti? They always get like called in the same sentence. Sinti and Roma. They probably like each other.
Sinti.
I don't know what
yeah,
the
but
Sinti are.
most Europe is racist against Roma people, and just as much as white people in America are racist against black people in America.
Yeah, but it's like, I mean, don't the Roma peoples, I mean, lots of them are racist against like all other all non-Roma people. Isn't that something, there's some credence to this, I mean, common, like, I guess that's a common projection or common criticism of this kind of people.
In my hometown, there's like 10% Roma people, yeah?
Really? That's a
Yeah.
lot?
And they live in like a side of the town that's very poor, yeah?
Okay.
And I went through there like every single day for my commute as like the fucking palest white Romanian, yeah? And aside from like some kids being kids, you know, being a bit annoying, and like them having dogs out because their fence has a hole in it and they don't have the money to fix it or like the resources. Aside from stuff like that, that's like comes out of poverty, they were actually really respectful and nice people.
Really?
And well, maybe it's also because like my father is a teacher and he's very respected and well known in the community, so I might have a bit of a bias here. But my father also like lends some of the money and they always pay back. They are honest people, at least the ones I've met.
Huh. Wow.
Can I tell a story that I experienced in person?
Yeah.
So this was on a train.
It's gonna be
time.
an opposite story. This is why we don't base facts on any anecdotal stuff.
Yeah,
this is true.
I'm asking.
You're free to tell your stories, guys. Go on.
So the guy. So I was in a train going to. Well, I can't remember where I was going. I was going somewhere, and this one Roma guy, was working as a seasonal job picking raspberries because most Western Serbia is known for that. Oh boy, I don't think I can even quote him because it was all like PG, very much graphic. Mentions of having coitus with his boss's grandma, scamming him. At one point, he told me that I should not be an honest person. In using him as an example, I'm not an honest person. I steal boilers, I steal football goals, I steal paper earrings.
Every single stereotype mashed into one.
It was so incredible, man. It was literally a stereotype. And then he finished, and then he later on made some unsatisfactory comments about teenage girls.
Oh no.
Okay.
Definitely will be filed as sexual harassment.
Okay. I do have something to add to this because I know, being from a country that has like a lot of them, I have heard of bits and pieces of their culture, and they tend to marry pretty young and have lots of kids. That's like in their culture.
That is true.
Yeah.
So that kind of just comes with the territory. And also on the idea that they are also like racist against white people and stuff like that, and like the majority population. This is just a cycle, like the chicken and the egg. You don't know which one started it first. For example, in Romania, we used to fucking enslave them.
Huh.
You did?
Yeah, the church used to enslave them.
Wow, it's crazy. Yeah, I mean, look, there's a lot of Roma immigrants in my country.
This is what separates white people being racist against Roma people and Roma people being racist against white people. Because in one case, the Roma people have been enslaved. In the other case, well, you don't. There haven't been white people enslaved by Roma people, I guess. I'm not sure about that, but
there's two different kinds of racism that you have to point out here.
Yeah.
There's institutional racism, which is like systemic racism, let's call it better.
Yes.
Which is like
Yes.
racism that has existed and is perpetuated. And there's interpersonal racism. Interpersonal racism can be from anyone to anyone.
Yes.
Let's make that clear.
Yes.
Systemic racism is generally with the group that has the majority power against the group that has the minority power, because the group that has the majority power oftentimes will enslave the other, and then the other is kept in a cycle of poverty. Now, I'm actually unsure. I do have to look up the communist governance policies on the Roma people. However, nowadays we do actually have some affirmative action for them, which I'm not a fan of affirmative action. I think it's a band-aid solution. And for example, we have special seats for Roma people in universities and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's a band-aid solution.
Yeah.
It like gives like one or two of them a leg up, and then that's it.
I think that's worse. Well, why would they need like a special seat? Like I fail to see like what's the.
Yeah, I failed to see it either. It's literally just affirmative action.
In theory, it's for incentivizing Roma people to participate, but I don't know.
Well, there is a stereotype here that Roma people stink, so I think that would just only enforce the stereotype.
Yeah, I remember my literature teacher literally say that life's not fair because like the minority will get the advantage because they get the affirmative action, and like it just perpetuates the cycle of hatred.
Yeah,
so I mean, about the cycle, so there's a lot of Roma immigrants in my country. They aren't like the best immigrants. There's a lot of stereotypes about them, and most of them are true, although it's a small minority. It perpetuates this kind of like it's theft and all the negative stereotypes we talked about earlier. But mostly they're known for not associating with the main culture. Now that's lots of immigrants in our country because we make it incredibly easy to mooch off the state and not integrate into German culture because our politicians hate us and they want this. But they are one of these people who I would say have they've been doing this for generations, non-association, disassociation, and I think they have a right to do this. I think that's parallel societies are cool and normal. They should be something that's not politically threatened. Sadly, they are. I mean, politicians usually don't like people self-governing, forming their own communities and keeping to themselves because then they can't control them. And so, yeah, parallel societies, that's how the Christian conservatives, the people who are at fault for a migrant crisis, call this problem. And they're going to take on this problem because the state can't have people disassociating. I think it's a good idea. I think they are doing something positive when they say no to all the stuff in our modern Western culture and say we'll keep to ourselves, we'll just live here.
Yeah, I also believe it has their right to do so, even if it perpetuates some stereotypes, because even here they do keep to their own community. Like there's a reason why they've all kept like that side of the town, even in my hometown, yada yada. But that's just their right to do so.
Yeah. And so you can't join them because you're not Roma. Well, they don't they don't owe you anything. They don't owe you participation in your culture. And I think this is something we all need to agree. That there are boundaries, and these boundaries are set by voluntary association. That's something. This might be the most important thing people should learn.
Although I would say that, for example, a very good example, I think, of a sort of synthesis of the two cultures could be that, traditionally, Roma people have been famous for their as musicians, and Roma music is very much popular in both Romania and Serbia, and it's very common to have Roma people perform for weddings or celebrations or whatnot, and some of the music has become pretty much like national, just average national music that doesn't really have like a definition that is like this is Roma and this is non-Roma. Just something we consider our shared culture.
Yeah, that's one of the things I'm hoping happens with most of the migrants in my country, because right now it's a bit more segregated than it has to be. And I think if we'd be working together, actually working, participating in society, not just mooching off the state. Germans do that too. They live in the same ghettos and they just mooch off the state and they live in their own spheres, and should be that way. If people actually work, they are forced to work together, and
exactly.
that's a huge part in bringing societies together and not even homogenizing them like the globalists would like us to, but just keep what's good about our own cultures and respect each other.
And work together, and you get good things like currywurst.
Yeah, currywurst.
Exactly.
Right. I'm very flattered that you've taken to learning lots of German words. It's nice.
It's not so much just learning; it's just connected, I guess. You find these like regular stuff in everyday speaking.
Yeah, I guess. Well, I'm going to try to get up to speed on some Serbian words until next time.
That's okay.
Well, you should all learn Italian at this point.
Sorry?
You should all learn Italian at this point.
The Germanics destroyed the Roman Empire. Thank you very much. Teutoburg Forest was a thing, you know?
I don't care. I want a rebirth of a Roman Empire. Even though I know nothing about it.
Far right moment.
Although, I will say, if you ever hated the Northern Italians, Cav, it is because of the Holy Roman Empire controlling that and being influenced.
Yeah. The Northerners can go.
They can go back to Germany.
You know what they can go do. You already know it.
Yeah. Nice.
But yeah, I think we can wrap up the episode. I wasn't expecting so many tangents.
Yeah, I wasn't either. But
before we end, I just want to say I did fact check, and all the recent news articles are saying that it was a 17-year-old guy who was born in Cardiff from Rwandan parents, and he wasn't Muslim.
Okay.
Yeah, Rwanda is pretty down south, so.
But yeah, he was born in Cardiff. Like, come on, it's like saying I'm an immigrant, even though I was born in Italy, because I have parents that aren't Italian.
Yeah, true.
I mean,
and just because he was born in Wales doesn't mean he likes sheep.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Welsh. Welsh is a terrible language. Whoever came up with that?
I don't know. It's kind of rad in my opinion.
Kind of what?
Rad.
Rad. They have their own secret language, and it's. I mean, they use the same signs. Signs are all in English when you go there, but you can't understand what people are saying. That's fun. We have these kind of places in my country too.
Well, You wanted to say something?
I was just going to ask, are we wrapping it up?
Yes. We are wrapping it up. Thanks everyone for watching. We've had a lot of chatters today. Well, it was always the same, like 3 or 4, but we had a lot of interactions. I like that. I'm hoping the next episodes will be as packed with interactions as this one. So yeah, thanks everyone for participating in this episode. Next episode will be next week, and it will be a Thursday, right? This time?
Well, actually, I can't promise my being here, but more than that some of the time. So yeah.
Okay, so we'll see. Like if you're gonna be busy on Thursday, you're gonna let us know, and we will do it on Wednesday maybe again.
Oh,
I think we can do the planning off camera
because I don't talk all the time.
But can you repeat that? I couldn't listen.
We should definitely try an episode of without me, since we tried one without the Russian and went quite well. And
well, yeah.
No. I'm just saying.
I don't know. I want everyone to be present as much as possible, so I'm not sure.
Yeah, but if you did try, I bet you'd have a lot harder hitting like discussions, because I don't talk all the time. Go on.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, we'll see. But normally next episode would be next Thursday, because we always did episodes on Thursday, and today was an exception. So yeah, normally it's Thursday, but there could be an exception. I should put posts to warn people that there are gonna be exceptions, but we didn't have many viewers, so I thought it wasn't necessary. But today we did have some chatters, so
yeah, with a high score of 6 or 7.
I'll be posting if there's gonna be exceptions.
Right.
But yeah, normally it's Thursday. Around the evenings of Central Europe time. So yeah, we'll see you on the next episode. Bye everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Arrivederci.
Bye.